The International Monetary Fund has been dishing out loans to help some nations get through the coronavirus pandemic. However, as usual, loans come with a cost, and in the end, somebody's got to pay, right? RT's Alex Mihailovich has that story.
It's a virus that has ravaged people and economies alike. And while scientists work to develop treatments and vaccines for COVID-19, organizations like the International Monetary Fund are looking to keep countries afloat. The IMF's efforts are backed by many in the global community.
This is exactly the kind of crisis for which the IMF was created, to put teetering economies back on their feet.
According to Oxfam, since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, the IMF has lent $101 billion to 81 countries so far, and is standing by with a chest of an overall $1 trillion in loans for nations in need. But like with most loans, there's a catch. The IMF is urging nations that receive money to adopt measures such as major cuts to public services and pensions. Many are afraid that this will lead to more privatization, wage freezes and cuts, and the firing of public sector employees such as doctors, nurses, and teachers. Some say the positions would be filled virtually, with tech companies taking the reins. In other words, economies would shift to a new model.
Makes no sense to use money today to invest in the economy of yesterday. We ought to invest in the economy of tomorrow, and do so with a sense that it is important to be a just transition.
However, as in the past with IMF loans, problems arise. Most notably, a rise in taxes and a growth in poverty and inequality. According to the interim executive director of Oxfam International, the IMF has sounded the alarm about a massive spike in inequality in the wake of the pandemic. Yet, it is steering countries to pay for pandemic spending by making austerity cuts that will fuel poverty and inequality. According to some, if things were to be steered in the right direction, the current COVID-19 crisis could be used to improve living conditions. And the IMF seems to know that.
Public investment, especially in green projects and in digital infrastructure, can be a game changer. They have the potential to create millions of new jobs while boosting productivity and incomes.
But a critical problem persists. The potential fallout is once again, the rich will benefit from the public investment while the poor will pay for it. Oxfam says sticking the bill to the less fortunate while bringing in austerity is a recipe for disaster. Instead, the organization would like to see the IMF press countries to boost investments in universal health and education and ensure the richest individuals and large corporations pay their fair share of tax. There is little doubt that for the sake of people and the planet, human behavior needs to change. However, the IMF's plan is questionable, and for those who have taken money from the organization, there will be little choice but to go along with the will of the moneylender. For RT, I'm Alex Mihailovich.
And joining us now for more on this is former UK MP George Galloway. George, great to see you. So kind of walk us through this here, and what are your initial thoughts on all of this?
Well, you know the old saw, beware of the Greeks bearing gifts. Well, beware of the IMF offering loans. Because these are not strings, Faran. These are chains. These are garrots that will strangle the people of these poor countries, poor already under the neoliberal model favored by the IMF. These chains will drag them down. These garrots will strangle the people further. But it's peculiar to me. I'm not making a moral case here because I know that money has no morality. Neither does the IMF. I'm making a practical point here. The real crisis of world capitalism today is that a great number of the population of the world, probably half of it, cannot afford to buy that which they and the other half are producing. There's a crisis now of overproduction, underconsumption. People don't have enough. Therefore, if you believe in capitalism, you should be giving people more money to spend, because it's spending we need right now to get economies kick-started and moving again. These IMF loans, with these kind of conditions, are offering the very opposite. And therefore, we will never get out of the slump that we are currently heading into, indeed have already begun to fall into. But there's a long way to go to reach bottom.
And, it's interesting, you say that because, when you, like I had mentioned in my opening, you have a country like Tunisia right now that has 13 doctors for 10,000 people in the middle of a global pandemic. And, just bare bones here, you take out a loan, you then go into debt. And while it could take a while to pay back, taking out these loans, isn't this just going to get these countries held back even more, and having 13 doctors per 10,000 people for quite a while?
Yeah, although there's 30 million people in the United States who don't have any health care cover at all. There's another 30 or 40 million in America who are underinsured for health care. And the prognosis or the diagnosis I just made applies to your country and mine equally, where people are being evicted on a massive scale, where job losses have become as bad as the Depression of the 1930s. All those people can no longer consume. They can no longer buy anything. They won't even have a roof over their heads in many cases. So what's the point in making them suffer more? That merely makes the economy worse. Give them money. If you give the people in America another $1,200 right now, almost all of it would be immediately spent, and it would be spent locally on business in the United States of America. This is the point I make. I don't believe in capitalism, but if I did, I'd be on the side of FDR and Galbraith, and I'd say, at a time of massive slump like this, let's flood everybody with more money to spend. Spend on things, spend on services, bringing more people back into work so that they can spend on things and services, and eventually can pay tax so that we can rebuild ourselves. I just feel that the people running capitalism don't have capitalism's best interests at heart. They're destroying the thing they say they love.
And George, it's interesting because throughout all of this and this pandemic, we're seeing, at least here in the United States, that K-shaped recovery where the rich seem to kind of get a little bit richer and the poor not so much. But George, always love your input. Thank you so much. Former MP George Galloway, thank you.